Hi, this is Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist here with incremental insights for better business, better health.
And I'm Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health, here helping companies look at their overall employee health improvement programs and how they can reduce costs as well as improve the outcomes for their employees.
So, another week, and gosh, I think the trending topic these days seems to be variants and the big concern about whether variants are going to escape or what is the impact going to be. Fred, I know you've been looking at it. What have you found?
Yeah, it's really an interesting topic you talk about. What's going on with these variants? You know, you've got the B.1.1.7, you've got the variants from Brazil, et cetera. And an interesting article came out called Structural Impact on SARS-CoV-2 Spike Protein by D614G Substitution. It was written by, I believe this name, and if I pronounce it incorrectly, my apologies, Jun Zhang, who's at the Division of Molecular Medicine at Boston Children's Hospital in Boston, and a large group of co-authors, including folks from Harvard and Codex Biosolutions, Inc. It was published in Science March 16th, so very recent, and it discusses this substitution that they saw that is now in all of the variants. And we know that these variants spread more rapidly or appear to be more contagious or infectious. And so they looked at this change of aspartic acid by glycine at the position 614 in the spike. And everyone talks about those spike proteins and how they bind to the cell to then ultimately infect the cell and get this replication going. And so they wondered, does this have something to do with that? And what they found was really fascinating. So in the original aspartic acid version, about 50% of the time, the spike itself collapses before it's able to bind. So if you think about this like a key going into a lock, that key has to fit, and that's what the spike protein does. It fits on the ACE2, and then after it fits, it then folds or bends together and then is allowed to inject into the cell. Well, what happens with this is about half the time under the D variant, the spike proteins collapse. So half of the proteins on that virus are not out to be able to bind. In the G variant, you get about 90% of the proteins are rigid. They're able to stay up and go in as a key and then fold and inject into the cell. So a really interesting reason for why they think these variants are more contagious and spreading faster. And they talk about the fact that this also leads to their belief that the vaccines developed by Pfizer and Moderna, which target this spike protein, they may have to look at modifying them slightly because of this variant, but they would be better at binding because more of the spike protein is out and available on top of the virus.
I'm listening to you, Fred, and all I can think of is I want to go to the Fantastic Journey. If you remember that movie where they minimized and went into the little ship, but I want to go down to that submolecular level, because if you see any of these three-dimensional images, that's the thing about proteins. It's a string of these amines that are put together, but they bind up, and small change can completely change the shape. And that's exactly what's going on here. And we're starting to learn more about that shape. And in fact, if you go back enough number of years, not that long, we didn't really have a good sense of that three-dimensional structure. We've really sort of struggled getting to that. We've now got the tools to be able to see it. In fact, there's imagery that allows us to show that. And that's what's going on with these variants. They're sort of changing individual proteins in some of these spikes. And, again, for the image, that's the image that everybody associates with this virus. I think it was used for probably 6 months at least for every news outlet, that, colored thing that came from the CDC. It's those pieces poking out. It's one of the reasons that we've got the naming of this, the coronavirus. And I think the important thing is understanding that now starts to help us in terms of combating it. So obviously we have to stay on top of it. I think from a translation standpoint, what does that mean for me relative to these variants? Does it mean that they're more transmissible? So I think the fact that it locks in better and is able to get into the cell says, oh, it's able to get in, so it's more effective. And how do we combat that? Well, in the case of some of these vaccinations, they attack different parts. And, if they're not attacking the part where this mutation occurs, they have a tendency to be better at countering it because that change doesn't affect that locking mechanism for the vaccine. Now, from a standpoint of businesses, individuals thinking about this, here's what I would say about variants. Ignore the clickbait headlines coming from our wonderful media who continue to sort of variants, it's the end of the world. Variants, it's not the end of the world. I think we just go through this cycle. Here's the thing about the immune system that I would say probably the most important to remember for the majority of people is it's really complicated. And we don't fully understand the two basic elements of this and what the impact of these things are. And that's good news because it's not just a single response by the body. It is a varied response from these two different humoral systems. And to be clear, it's not just two responses. Within that are all these cascades of different activities, killer cells, attachment cells, the T cells, B cells, memory cell, all of that stuff, which, God bless the people that really understand this all the way into the detail. But mostly because of that wide range of responses, the variants have a tendency to be combated by those different responses. And that's good news in my view.
Yeah, and I just add one quick point that you made about this whole clickbait deal with these. Remember, at the same time, those non pharmacological interventions that you always talk about have an impact. They work. So keep doing that. Keep wearing your mask, keep distancing, keep washing your hands, watch out for indoor activities. Yes, this binds stronger to the cells, has more ability to bind, but these are things we should continue to do as employers. And I know also, Nick, that you delved into an article in Cell magazine apparently that discussed variants as well. So what did you find?
Yeah, so that seemed to imply that the variants were causing more challenges for the immune response created by the vaccine. So vaccine-induced humoral immunity was not as good, so they were escaping. But again, that's only a single part, and it's a grouping, and it varied depending on the different variants. So, I would just sort of take that in the context of all the other things. I think you're exactly right. If you walked away with one message as part of this, it's that the non-pharmaceutical interventions help us. And, to that point, what I'm hearing and reading currently with all these people going, woohoo, let's go, spring break. Oh my God, let's go party. Just really troubling. I know everybody wants to get out. God, I do, my family do, my friends do, but we just have to hold on longer so that we can move out of pandemic, get to endemic, or even complete suppression and disappearance of this. And that requires NPIs or non-pharmaceutical interventions. Please stay the course, folks.
I just want you to comment on one more thing, Nick, and you've mentioned this before. Although these variants may have an impact on current vaccines, the new mRNA technology allows us to do what?
Well, that's the beautiful thing. It's that new platform that we haven't had before. And we can say, oh, there's a new variant. Well, we'll create a vaccine. And there's a model within the FDA for those approvals. That's exactly what we do with the flu vaccine. And it's relatively fast in terms of production. So we've got some really great tools. Wow.
Fantastic. So again, it's been another great week, Nick. Your medical comments are always spot on. We always enjoy hearing them and learning from you. So this is Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health. Thanks so much for listening. And if you'd like more information, please go to our websites and take a look and contact us.
And this is Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist here with Incremental Insights for better business, better health.